Let's see, we have a couple of people joining. Start in a minute. Okay, great. We have a very special guest tonight, Edoardo Molinari. Welcome. Really honored that you're joining us and give your insights in your unique role as a player. You've been playing in Ryder Cup, multiple time winner on the European Tour, and also doing coaching, and that's kind of a unique combination, and really looking forward to you sharing your wisdom and stuff. And also early morning welcome to Marty in Australia, enjoying your new coffee machine. You need it. I'm sorry that it's a really inconvenient time for you, but
well, such is life.
Thanks for joining. And then we have also Jussi joining us from Dubai with the national team players. There it's a couple of hours later and much warmer than here, so we're a little bit jealous. But with those words, I would like, if I'll pass the word. Jussi, do you have anything to say before I pass it to Marty and Eduardo?
No, I mean, just, really appreciate, obviously Marty, all the work you've done with us to date. Great information, and then, kind of facilitating getting Eduardo with us. I mean, it's not often you get a, Ryder Cup player and kind of a tour legend, but then also somebody who's kind of taken that experience and kind of developing a coaching practice out of it as well. So it's kind of getting the best of both worlds. So really appreciate the time and insight and all the knowledge that you're going to share with us this evening. So yeah, fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, welcome everyone. Live from, 3:04 in the morning in Melbourne. I'm a little bit jealous too, Jussi, how warm it might be there, because it's starting to become very cold. I think everywhere where we're talking right now. But I guess I just want to sort of touch on sort of my experience of kind of where we got to today with Eduardo. And I was fortunate and well, I don't know if you actually remember the first time we met, and I know I've mentioned it to the guys in previous webinars, that I actually can't remember what year it was, but it was quite a long time ago. But I was doing some stuff with, and I think you're doing stuff with Hugh Maher at the time, and you had a 3D session with Mark Bull, and I took a few players with Mark Bull out at Reigate, and for Eduardo, most of the Finnish guys, Bully works with the national program and with the PGA, so that he's quite heavily involved with everyone down there. So everyone's aware of who he is and what he does. And so I remember you having a session, and I remember I was doing some work with some guys, and then you sort of asked if we can. Well, we went down and had some lunch, and we sort of kind of picked our brains on kind of some of the players. And I was doing it, and still doing a lot of stuff with Dr. Matt Bridge, which I know you've had some conversations with, just in regards to kind of training and practice and measuring, and obviously something I'm very passionate about for the guys that sort of listened into up to this date, that I've done quite a bit of work in that space. And I remember kind of sharing some stuff with you, and I know you were already doing plenty of sort of work in that space about kind of how to practice better, and then your statistic stuff, which that still blows my mind. That, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you recorded pretty much every shot in competition since you were about, 15, 16 years old. Something along those lines. Yeah. Close, yeah. So it's it's pretty mad for the players that are out there, that if you're asking them, have you, A, do you do stats? Some of them question that, yeah, they're thinking about it. Or B, maybe sometimes will, someone like yourself, you've been able to kind of be in the position you are in the world and still play the golf that you're able to play. I think this is me on the outside, Eduardo, but the fact that you've got that much information about yourself, using that type of that data and stuff, that you're able to be, in a great way to run your business the way that you do. And I think that's the important thing that, I guess, sort of from my point of view, working with tour players like yourself, is that, we need that information to make, some accurate calls on kind of why we do what we do on a day-to-day. And I think, without that information, unless you're lucky, and you would know plenty of players that were on tour that, they've been kind of lucky for years. You know what I mean? Like, and we all got stories about those guys, or they might have some really good people around them that allow that for him, that person, or that person to be sort of luckier for a good period of time. But for me, I think the more information, but not about the more information, but the more you know your own information.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. So I guess there's a few, we've got a kind of a list, and for the listeners tonight, we've got quite a few sort of questions that we gave Eduardo from the start, and I know there'll be plenty of questions hopefully at the end. One thing that I'll kind of reverse it a little bit, Eduardo, because I've been using Eduardo and Phil Kenyon have designed an app that, from a training app point of view, which I'll allow Eduardo to talk more about kind of a little bit later on, which ties into quite a few of the webinars that we've done so far about kind of how I measure practice with the players that I work with and the programs that I was working with. But this he's trumped me once again, but this is in such a better platform in regards to kind of being able to do it pretty much online. There's no excuse. You can do it anywhere. And then for the coaches and the programs are able to look in and see kind of how that works. So maybe for you, I think in a really cool way, kind of how are you sitting where you are today? There's a big question for you. In regards to kind of maybe go down the path of the statistics and sort of, why you felt like that was important, especially at a young age when you started doing, who in some ways, who influenced you to kind of start doing that?
Yeah.
How that's growing over a period of time.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, very long story short, always been passionate stats, and when I was, I have a degree in engineering, and when I was in my last couple of years of the degree, I was still an amateur, and I thought, right, I think I read somewhere that I don't know whether it was an interview or some player that said it, basically said that stats for a golfer are like numbers for a business. And at the end of the year, any business should be able to know where they're making money, where they're losing money, where they're most efficient, where they can improve. And I thought, oh, that's a very good analogy. So then from that moment, I thought, right, I want to know, if I'm a good putter, if I'm a poor putter, where I can improve. And this I'm talking nearly 20 years ago now. So then, because I studied a bit of engineering, I developed a small time spreadsheet on Excel where I would just record my putts, fairways, green hit, stuff like very, very basic stuff. And then each week, each month, I started to add something more, so like greens in regulations, distance from the pin. And then eventually 20 years down the line, it became a massive thing. And I mean, there were a few big stepping stones. The biggest one probably was in 2010. I remember I was playing on the PGA Tour at the time, and that was when the very first week when strokes gained putting came out, and I'm talking May 2010. And so I read the article and I thought, oh, this is genius. And then at the bottom of the article, it said that a guy named Mark Brody from Columbia University had invented this. So next minute, I find his email on the internet, drop him an email and said, Mark, to meet you. And I just told him who I was and blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, I think it was 3 days later, he flew down to Lake Nona, where I was staying at the time, and we spent 3 days together talking from 6 a.m. in the morning until 2 a.m. at night, just talking about, I mean, the minute, I promise you, the minute he opened his computer, I thought, wow, this is, because based on the stats that were available at the time, it was like fairways, greens, and basic stuff. And he already had all the strokes gained that you see now, he had them in 2010 all the way back to 2003, I think it was. And he had all my numbers, he had all other players' numbers, and it was like, oh, this is unbelievable. So then I implemented that straight away, and that was obviously a massive thing, because that gave me the chance to exactly understand where I was losing shots, where I was making shots each and every week. At the end of 2019, a few caddies and a couple of players, they knew I was doing my own thing, and they came to me and asked if I could help. And then in this COVID was a bit of a blessing, if we can say it was a blessing, because during lockdown in Italy, I had 3 months for myself, just with the family, and each day, each morning, I would spend a couple of hours just rebuilding my system and making available and usable by different players, different, caddies, players, whoever wanted to use it. And as of now, I've got quite a few players. I had to hire a guy to help me a little bit with the day-to-day stuff. And it's something that, to be honest, it started as a hobby, and it's now becoming almost like a second job, because it's, in the bubble these days, we've got 3-4 hours by ourselves each day. There's no gym, you cannot have a walk around, you can't do anything. So as soon as you leave the golf course, instead of spending time on Instagram or Twitter or whatever that is, I just do a bit of stats for the guys, and it's almost like a way to get my mind off the current situation and of my current golf, which is not great right now, but I'm working on it, and I know where I need to improve.
Well,
Sorry,
in saying that, yeah. I remember reading, I think it was an article, or you telling me, or I'm trying to remember. I remember someone along the lines that obviously you're playing, Ryder Cup, playing great golf, and then the golf kind of dropped off, which is I think that in itself is a great story about kind of understanding that, just to stay on tour for such a long period of time, it's never linear this way. It's there's always moving and flowing a little bit. And I remember, I said, I think I maybe read it, that they were talking about kind of maybe how your putting had dropped off, compared to where you were when you were playing your kind of so-called best golf. But the reality is that your stats showed that you were a better putter at the time than where you were when you were playing Ryder Cup along those lines.
Yeah. I think that was about the time when I met you. I switched to an arm lock putter back then. It was 2014, 2015 when I switched to it, because I felt like I was never a good putter. I was a streaky putter. Like, I would have some really good weeks, but overall, like, I didn't have one season up until then where I gained shots on the greens relative to a PGA Tour benchmark. And even 2010, I managed to make the Ryder Cup team, and I was losing about 0.3 shots each day on the greens, which is quite an achievement. I mean, some of you might remember won a Glen Eagles that was to make the Ryder Cup team in 2010. I hold like a 45-footer on 17, and everyone thought, oh, this guy is putting like a genius. But I 3-putted 2 times on the front 9, and I missed a 10-footer on 14, which no one remembers about. So it's like, yeah, I was a good putter when it mattered, but overall I wasn't a great putter. And so, this is one of the things that the stats showed. And the good thing, as you said in the beginning, is that each player has its own pattern. So like, I know what I'm capable of, for example, tee to green or off the tee, while it's not the same for everyone. Like other players, if you get a guy like Rory, he's able to gain more than a shot per round of the tee. But I mean, that's very unique. I will never be able to gain nowhere near that much of the tee, but I know I can gain somewhere else. Like, for example, historically, I've always been extremely good with wedges, short irons. And right now, even if I'm gaining on wedges and short irons, it's nowhere near my best. So like, that's an area where I'm putting my focus on right now. And if you have your numbers and if you keep the stats for a long time, I think that's very important to know how did you play your best golf and almost have a blueprint to try and get back to there or get even better.
Yeah, I know I've got a list of questions to get through, but just talking to you right now already is sparking some thoughts, and more for maybe sort of the coaches that are out there that are working with some high performance athletes that are trying to move from whatever level they're at right now. They could be they could be just turning pro or on tour, or developing amateurs in the high performance program, so that you see and the guys are working with over in Dubai. I'm very big I think that kind of without that kind of information that you've got there, I think we're in a lot of ways, yes, experience allows us to kind of guess better.
Yeah.
But it's still is a guess. And I think, I think to something I think for the players that are out there that are listening to this, that I think, really shows if you're serious about, you want to be, if this is a lifestyle you want to live, and Eduardo's not given it's not the greatest lifestyle at the moment because he's stuck in a bubble and he's can't do much there for it. It sounds like they're like prison time to some degree, but I haven't seen too many prisons that have got paintings in the background, so it's still better than that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that these, I think, as a player and something that you've done, obviously thought that out, over 20 years ago, that you need to become accountable to yourself to then put people around you that have the knowledge and the wisdom to really kind of benefit what you're doing to be a better player. So, I think a lot of the players expect that programs or people around them are just going to give them that information. And I think until you sort of own it yourself and really understand why you're doing it and the reason behind it, I think that will really then influence kind of who you put in your team. And I know there's a question that we did sort of come up about was, in regards to, say, the coaches out there, but how do you see kind of, from, in the last 20 years or whatever it may be on tour, how have you seen kind of how coaching has developed or evolved over time, and then maybe the teams that are out there and, the different service providers and so on, what have you seen in your experience and even yourself working with different coaches over time, and, where do you see it? Where was it back kind of where it is now to where you are now? And
yeah, I would say, I mean, obviously coaching evolved a lot in the last 20 years since I've been on tour, 15 years. I mean, from a technical point of view, for sure. I mean, you don't see, I would say right now, I call it fashion, but it's not really fashion, but like the way you're supposed to swing a club now is way different than it was 15, 20 years ago. To start with, but I don't want to get too much into the technical thing. I think I think coaches have now the great luck or the great opportunity to use a lot of information that before wasn't available. So like TrackMan, force plates, stats to some point. I mean, before you had to guess a lot more. You had to, basically chat with the player and, how did you feel out there today? What was, sometimes all you could look for was like the scores on the internet. And it's like, oh, why did you shoot 78 that day? Or I hit 1 OB and I 3-putted twice, whatever. While now, in one way, it's easier to coach because you can tell, right, my player, he's been putting poorly, he's been missing left to right pass low every time, whatever. But I think it's a double-edged sword because at the end of the day, the player knows that you have the information to make more informed decisions, and you better make good decisions, because if you don't, then I see a lot more changing in coaches, in putting coaches, in caddies, in whatever, simply because I think the player themselves expect more from the coaches, which is, again, it's good and bad, but I think at the end of the day, having more information, if you know what to do with information, fantastic. But sometimes it's like some coaches might even, I remember when I first came out on tour, some coaches didn't even want to look at the video. They were like, I can see it with my eyes. I don't need TrackMan. I don't need video. I just, I see it. That's it. And I think sometimes maybe it's because they didn't know what to do with, attack angle, swing direction, and spin loft. But then other coaches that decided to embrace it, then all of a sudden I think they separated themselves from the rest, because they became better coaches because of technology, because of more data, because of more information available. So it's as I said, it's very much a double-edged sword, but I think if you use it to your advantage, it can only benefit the coach, the player, and everyone around him.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and just my own experience, and with the amount of, obviously, as we know, information's great, but what we do with it's more important. And I think for, say, the coaches that are kind of listening, and I know different webinars that I've done over the last sort of 6-12 months, which is really, I love all the technology, and everyone knows that I'm sort of around it, and I think it's we've somewhat got a duty of care to be across that stuff, but that shouldn't be the art of coaching. I think kind of what we do with that, and then how we then interact that with the players, I think that's the real sort of true art of coaching. And I think I've seen in my experience, and Edoardo, you've been out there long enough to being around players that have gone to, they look like they're really going great, and then they might drop off a little bit, and then they start changing things, and all of a sudden they no longer have a job anymore, and nearly never coming back. So I think it's dangerous to some degree that, the chopping and changing, because it really can get you away from maybe what you've done over a period of time. And I know, and without putting you on the spot on this one, because this is not part of the question, so I'm just thinking out loud now, but even for yourself, for your journey, and, working with different coaches, and I know that, you obviously work with Dennis, and you work with, and I remember you going to Sean Foley, and Sean Foley, as you know, is a good friend of mine, and I remember talking to Sean about you as well. I think I sent you a picture from a bar somewhere way back when, but to your own experiences of kind of your own golf swing, where have you found your own struggles, where, maybe if you had, it's a crystal ball, but if you had your time again, would you do things different? And this is nothing about the personalities or the people that we work with. This is just your own experiences over time. How would you maybe sort of roadmap yourself again if you had to do it again?
Yeah, I would say, well, to be honest, after 2009, 2010, 2011, which were so far my best years in my career, and hands down, at the time, I never felt I was top 15 in the world at the time, and I never felt like a top 15 in the world inside me. But probably if I had like the stats I have now, and the numbers I have now, and if I look at them, I thought, well, I was probably better than a top 15 T2 green, and I never really felt I was. So that's one thing. And then, I mean, the other thing, but that's sometimes how life happens, is that I got injured at the end of 2011, and then I had 2 resurgeries in 2012 and 2013. And then when I came back, I decided to went to see Sean, just because at the time he seemed the best. He seemed the best as well for like players who had previous injuries. So like I went to see him, and I made quite a drastic swing change, which seemed to work in the beginning, but then after a while I couldn't see Sean enough. I didn't know what to do. I was like pretty much by myself at tournaments, struggling with my swing. And then it became very, very difficult for a couple of years, because I lost confidence, and it was just a tough road back. And then what I did there was just go back to my original coach, start work with him on the exact same things we were working on in 2010, 2009. And then it took a good 1.5 to 2 years to get back to where it was somewhere playable. And I managed to win again in 2017. But like, if I had to go all the way back, I mean, the only way I mean, obviously, I would have loved to have the information I have now to know that, like, when I was top 15, I was actually a top 10 player putting poorly. And I thought of myself the opposite. I thought myself I was a top 50 player, but I was having a great run on the greens and I won a few events just by chance, but it wasn't really that way. So that's maybe one regret that I might have. And the other thing I would do is I would just keep working on the same things over and over again and just make it a little bit better. I remember when I played I was still an amateur and I played Daniel Links with Francesco, who was his first year as a pro in 2005. I just won the US Amateur a few months before. And we played the last round with Paul McGinley. And at the end of the round, I didn't ask him for anything. At the end of the round, he comes to me and says, Edoardo, just remember, try to get better each and every day, but never change what you're doing, which is, I think, a fantastic input. As a, at the time I was 25, still an amateur, about to turn pro. And then if I go back and think about it, that was probably the most important thing that anyone ever said to me. And if you look at successful players that have been consistent during the years, like the Lee Westwood, the Adam Scott, the Sergio, I mean, they're all very unique in their own way, but they kept doing the exact same things over and over and over again. And, I mean, like my brother is the same. Francesco has been doing the exact same things for many, many years. Then at one point he improved his putting and his short game, and he had that fantastic 2018. And then he decided to chase speed, distance, whatever. And then he struggled badly 2019 and beginning of 2020. And then he's now went back to, doing the things that he always did before. And it seems like he's getting back on track. But it's like so many players, I think, make the mistakes that everyone wants to get better. But in order to get better, you start changing things a little bit too much. And then you lose your work. It's very difficult to get it back, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably some of the best information. I know, us and you, and as coaches, we've worked with players that have literally done that, and unfortunately moved into no longer there. I think what happened at Dunhill Links was probably one of the, as I said, I couldn't. It's as simple as that sounds. I think that's just that's professional golf.
Yeah.
In one word, in one sentence, I think that's just so important. And even to this day, that a couple of webinars that we've done, that when we talked about sort of, in some ways the Bryson effect, and I know Rory's, been very open about that, and there's other players, and I've had players myself that have kind of chasing this kind of whatever that is, but not understanding that, the statistics don't always show that that's the way or the trend that it should go. And I know that Kevin Kirk, who is a good friend of ours, that he's been on this webinar as well. And I remember him talking about when Bryson won, but that golf course was playing very, very different to most other golf courses. I know you've probably got all the stats on it anyway, but that was a very hard, fast golf course, and most people were missing the fairways anyway because of the speed of the fairway. So being further down in the rough was definitely an advantage versus maybe some of the normal sort of weeks you get out on tour. But I guess kind of moving into maybe some more of the kind of the performance areas and kind of some of the stuff that you're doing now with the players. And I know, we could speak for hours and hours on this, and I love it. But in regards to kind of, sort of turning more towards kind of where you've developed your performance app and how you've got to where it is now, and why, well, I guess to some reason for the coaches and the players, why do you feel like it's important? And then how do you feel like, for the coaches, from a coaching point of view, how do you feel like that's going to help them help develop the athletes, and the players themselves? What information can they get out of that? To me, I think to ask better questions back to their team or their coaches that they work with.
Yeah. So I guess I'll share the screen. So just if we talk about the app, it's easier to, can you see it here?
Yep.
Okay. So basically the app, as you said, Martin, it's, I developed it partly with Phil Kenyon, partly was, going back to our charts, to our early Excel spreadsheets. I remember when the first time we met, that time you mentioned before in December, I think it was October 2015, something like that.
It was a downhill links, round downhill links.
Yeah, October 2015. And I've always liked the idea of trying to make practice as similar as possible to what's happening on the golf course. And I think sometimes, I mean, even myself, I was guilty of practicing, doing what they call block practice too much, just shot after shot after shot with no consequence, nothing. And then when we met, I remember you showed me that quarter drills, a few different things, and I loved it, and I took it on board. And then we met, I think it was a couple of years later, and we shared some new things and stuff. And basically, I mean, the app it's pretty simple. I mean, you select new drill. You can do tee shot, approach shot, or putting. If you do with putting, you can select whether you want to do performance or block. I always do performance here, and then I select the distance range. Let's say 3 to 10 feet. I can select an amount of break, or just keep it random, or hide it. I go for random. And then slope, so flat uphill, downhill, similar thing. And then break direction, it's always random. And then I click start, and I'm given 18 different paths within the distance interval that I chose. So in this case, 8 foot, right to left, medium break, downhill. And then I simply enter the number of paths. So if I hold it 1, great, I gain about half a shot. Then I go to the next, it's 5 foot, right to left, shallow uphill. Usually I only keep one of these two. So I either have a right to left uphill or a right to left shallow, simply because it takes a long time to find a 5-footer right to left shallow uphill. And then let's say if I miss it left, fine. If I miss it right, whatever, I can change it. And then I get all the way at the end. I just go quickly, and I get a report where it says, "Oh, my strokes gain." Yeah, of course, I made all the putts pretty much. This much. I wish my stats were this good. How much I gain on the left to right, on a right to left. How many putts I missed left to right, on a left to right, on a right to left. I mean, there's a series of stats. Depending on which subscription you have, you get more or less stats. I mean, here now it says downhill left miss or right miss, but it would be low and high miss percentages. So even at the end of each drill, I only look at strokes gain, left to right, and right to left. But then what I do as well is I can look at my history. So I go back to the history, and I look at either an individual drill, or I can have a look at, for example, all my drills in the past. So I've been gaining on the putting green, I've been gaining 1 shot. And as you see, I've been putting way better on left to right than right to left. And then if I want, obviously there's my miss pattern for different breaks of putt, which in this case are quite similar. I simply miss more right to left putt than left to right. So this is the putting in a nutshell, which is, you can do like some leg putting drill and get slightly different reports and stuff like that. I think what's very cool here is the approach shot, which is, it comes directly from what Marty and I discussed together years ago. So basically you select the distance range. Let's say you want to do wedges, so 75 to 125. You can do it either in meters or yards, depending what unit you choose in the beginning. And then you can select outdoor, indoor. It doesn't change anything, but then when you filter, you can not only look at like outdoor or indoor or everything. So let's go for outdoor. And now you're given a pin. What you do here, you have to use a TrackMan, obviously. In a short, I guess in a few weeks, it will be available for FlyScope as well, where you just enter the distance from the pin. And what you do here, you set up test center, 10 shots to random distances within the interval range that you chose in the beginning. So in this case, 75 to 125. And then you enter the shot. So let's say the first shot is 87 meters and you hit it 88 meters and TrackMan says, this is 90 points, perfect. And then I go to the next. So then the next shot is, the pin is back right. What changes here is that if I score less than 90 points, let's say I score 85 points, it's going to ask me whether I short-sighted myself or not. So because the pin is back right in this shot number 2, if I miss it either right or long, that's short-sighted. So if you look at here, strokes gained, if I miss it anywhere short or left of this pin, would have been slightly positive. But if I miss it on the wrong side, it's going to be minus 0.3. So basically I missed the green, I'm in a bunker now. And then again, next shot, let's say I score 95 points, so no problem. Then it's a front left pin, I score 81 points, but I'm on this side of the pin, so that's still fine. Front right, 86 points, but I miss it, whatever, let's say short. So I'm in a bunker again. Front left, short-sighted myself again, 77. And I'm short, so I lose even more. And then I get to the end. The middle pins, there's no short side. Even if you miss it, if you score 85 points, you're still not losing as much. Like there's no penalty. And then you get at the end, and it's like, okay, this will be my strokes gain relative to a PGA Tour player. My best pin was the back left. My worst pin was the front left. And I short-sighted myself 30% of times, which is a lot. I mean, you want to have this number to be between 10 and 20, ideally 15, 16%, no more than that. If it's consistently more than 20%, I would say you are way too aggressive to the pins. You're going for the pins too much. That's just one little tip. And then tee shots, it's very simple. I mean, you, again, outdoor or indoor, you select a club. So let's say driver, and then you're shown 10 different shots, which is always those 10 shots in random order. So they keep changing every time you set up the drill. And then again, basically what I do here, if I have a TrackMan, I look at total, and my fairway is 12.5 meters wide. So sorry, 25 meters wide, 12.5 on each side. So if my shot finishes within plus or minus 12.5, I just click fairway and I enter my total distance, let's say 281, and again this much. Then say shot number 2, I miss it 16 meters left, I click rough, and let's say I only hit it 267, so I lose this much. And then I just keep going for 10 shots. If I don't have a TrackMan, I can enter, I mean, I can still do it. I can enter my average distance of the tee, and then I pick whatever, 2 trees, 2 houses, to something at the back of the range, and say, right, my fairway is between those 2. I can even keep changing. So I can go one time down the left side of the range, next time down the right side. For example, if I miss it, this shot, go OB, so I lose 2 shots straight away. And then I hit the fairway, fairway, water. And then again, at the end, strokes gain -3, median distance, how many fairways, how many times I miss it left or right, how many times I got a penalty. And again, here you can go in the history, and you can even filter by, let's say, last week, last month, or filter by different clubs or different distance intervals. I mean, this last thing is not there yet. It'll be there in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks maximum. What I notice about this is that it makes my practice much more relevant, much more efficient. I see a lot more poor shots on the range. Like I had one of the guys doing the stats with me, tour player, good player. He was trying, and a few weeks ago he comes to me in Kenya and he said, oh, I just tried the app, and it's weird because I keep losing shots on the range, but I feel like I'm hitting the ball quite well. And I'm like, well, you're losing shots on the course of the tee, And it kind of makes sense that if you're trying to do the same, you're losing on the range as well. And he was like half shocked that, you know, he couldn't gain shots on the range, but it's like, it's very, very similar to what happens on the golf course. And it's like when you use it on the range and all of a sudden you have a shot with OB left and rough on the right, if that player is scared to miss it left, you'll see the biggest block you've ever seen on the range. I promise you. And I mean, I'm sure, Marty, you've seen something similar happening to your guys, but it's like, it's amazing, especially off the tee. As soon as they see OB or water, if they're struggling off the tee and they're not very confident, you just see that, I mean, some very bad shots on the range. Well, usually on the range, everyone is free win, and it's like down the range every time, and it's down the middle every time. So it's, I just noticed that it just makes, I mean, I look at it, I found it on myself. If I spend even on a week on tour, on the Wednesday, I usually do one wedge test, one either short iron or mid iron, depending what's more required at that single golf course. And then, so I do like 20 balls, and those 20 balls, they feel like 2 hours on the range, because like every shot has a different pin, a different number, maybe the wind slightly changed, and it just prepares me much better for Thursday to Sunday.
Yeah, I couldn't. I love that. I love what you said there about the, you know, all of a sudden the out of bounds, or you put a hazard somewhere and you can see some of the biggest misses. And I think even for the coaches out there, I know I've talked about this a little bit. Even if we just go back and maybe sort of how we can use, you know, some of the technology out there. I know, say I've got a 3D system myself. I actually prefer to capture 3D information. You know, ideally you have it on the golf course because that's real. But I've been doing it where I'm capturing going through the test. So the guys actually have to hit a shot with an outcome on different wind conditions. And that gives me two parts. When they do blow that shot right, that gives me a far better understanding of kind of what changed in regards to the movement. Could be a wind direction or a hazard in one direction or the other. So I think it's important that if we don't, you know, in some ways, if we don't have that type of way of practicing in these environments, you know, unless we're with the players or watching the players or caddying for them in tournament golf, it's very, very hard to understand really what you guys can get exposed to. And I said, I think that's why I absolutely love the app. And I like what you said then. I've done that myself where, excuse me, where I actually changed locations on the range. Because as we know, I think different angles to different winds and different pins and so on, I think it has a massive influence on kind of, and I know everyone here as golfers themselves, they know certain wind directions or certain shapes of holes that you just move better and feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just, it's brilliant. But I know obviously you're over in Dubai, and I know you and Edoardo have had a bit of a chat as well. You know, how are you finding it? It might be too early. I'm trying to work out kind of how long you've been there, but how are you finding, you know, the app and the guys or the girls that are using it as well?
We're probably from about tomorrow, we're going to start getting into it in a bit more detail with the guys. We've got a couple of days just on the ground, so just literally finding our feet and smelling grass again, as they say. But again, it's interesting having kind of been out in the course with the players for the last kind of 2 days. You know, very much what you're talking about, Edoardo, about kind of in practice simulating what we see on the golf course. So evidently, you know, coming from kind of indoors to all of a sudden being outdoors with wind, with, you know, different visual perspective, everything tends to kind of change. So, you know, I guess one of the things, you know, we've paid attention to now, certainly observing everybody, is, you know, how much work we need to kind of, or how much time we need to spend in just kind of recreating shots that we see them play on the course, you know, kind of with start lines and kind of shot shapes, and, you know, particularly with hazards. And you know, it's interesting what you brought up there, Marty, about kind of watching players move in their natural habitat, which is on the golf course. You know, there's a massive difference in how they go about things on the range versus on the golf course. So it'll be really interesting to get some data from players as to how they, how they kind of hit into, particularly here where we are. It's the course is quite demanding around the greens, so certain pin locations will really challenge the players in kind of how they shape shots and how they see them and kind of where their aim, etc. So, I was quite kind of chuckled to myself a little bit when Edoardo said a couple kind of sometimes coaching going in, kind of in fashions. We make things kind of look good, but does it actually perform? So, I guess our challenge in the next couple of weeks is just to try and kind of really try and help the players get into better form, in that they can perform and know themselves inside out as to what they can and can't do.
Yeah, it's great. I say this a lot. If we didn't change is a bad word, but if we didn't improve your golf swing, you're already a good player. We didn't improve your golf swing, but we got you to understand your game better. Would you be a better player? And I think I've yet to hear anyone say no. But it's interesting how much time are we trying to spend with, say, our players just to get them to understand when they do play well or when they're not playing well, what does that really actually look like? And then from that, how are you going to help, especially say for Edoardo being on the road, going through maybe some tough weeks, without that information there, he doesn't know how to spend his Wednesday. There's a lot of guesswork. There's, you start to question yourself, kind of, am I doing what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And there's so many influences out there, being, coaches and caddies and different providers that are very quick to give you information, but how relevant is that information relative to your own game? So I think, as a player, for the players listening, it's, if you want to be very good at what you do, you really need to own what you've got. And so, if someone comes in and sort of has a view on whatever, you can go, yes, that's great, but in the back of your mind that, actually, no, it's not right because my information says this. And why I say that, why I'm bringing this one up, because I love this and I say the story a lot. And I haven't seen you swing it for a while, but you've drawn the ball for most of your life.
Yeah.
And I remember basically the app that you got there, and you worked out pretty quickly that relative to kind of pin positions, you would have thought, most people would have thought, a back left pin position would probably be your ideal. Being able to shape the shot that way. But and if I'm wrong, but I think this is a story that we had, but as you worked out through practice that that back left pin with a draw ball flight was actually your biggest miss. Yeah. So yes, you probably felt comfortable because by the eye it looked right, because that was the shape that you felt, but it actually gave you, I guess, worse results in regards to strokes gained because of the ball flight.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things that I found out even working with other players, is that sometimes we're too much influenced about, the pin is back left, I need to hit a low draw, whatever, the pin is front right, I need to hit a high fade. While actually everything that really matters is like your dispersion pattern. So like if you hit a big, let's say a low draw to a back left pin, yeah, it might be very sexy to the eye, you might feel comfortable, but then if your miss is long left, it's not the shot you want to hit to a back left pin. And then, so to give you an example, I had a player last year, European Tour player, so good player, who said to me off the tee, he started doing the stats the week before and said, please, I want to record my shot shape of the tee. So each tee shot he now records whether he tries to hit it straight, draw, or fade. It's not the shot that comes out, but his intention. And he says to me, because on right to left dogleg holes, I like to draw it. If the hole is a dogleg from left to right, I like to fade it. And if the hole is straight, I like to hit it straight. And I thought, because I've seen enough numbers now, I thought this is just a recipe for disaster. And I don't say anything. I said, right, great idea, fantastic, let's do it, perfect. So a month and a half later, I think he played 5 events, made the cut in 4 of them, so playing decent. And I mean, I need to share this to you because this is hilarious. Just give me 1 second. I mean, There you go. So he comes back to me and he says, shapes before. There you go. Well, and I go back to him and say, right, this is your shapes of the tee. So with the draw, you're hitting it. I mean, overall, we're looking at 188 tee shots with the driver. So half of them, well, a little bit less than half of them, he tries to hit the draw and he lost 0.040 each time. Then 27 of them, he tries to hit a fade, disaster. He lost 0.127. He tries to hit it straight very few times because very few holes are that straight to his eyes. And he's gaining 0.131. Then he's got this fairway finder, which goes a bit shorter, hardly ever plays it, he gains. And then he's got the bomb and he gains. So I go back to him and I said, look, now listen to me. Anytime you try to draw it, you're losing. Anytime you try to fade it, you're losing even more. So why don't we just try and hit it straight every single time? Oh, no, I can't hit it straight. I said, I promise you, listen to me. So then he comes back, and this is 2 months after, where 112 tee shots, basically every tee shot was either a bomb or a fairway finder, 5 fades, 11 draws, so very, very, still loses here, a little bit better here, but it's 5 shots, so it's irrelevant. But everything he's trying to do is this one. And this guy went, I mean, he's now gaining 0.134 per tee shot, which is a lot. I mean, this is nearly a shot a day with driver. And before, he was about average. So he basically gained, I would say, 0.8 shots per day simply by changing the way he thinks on the golf course. And that's why, going back to your thing about the pin, is like, you know, the fact that the pin is back left, it doesn't mean that you have to hit a draw. I mean, most of the times, if anything, it's the opposite, because I see a lot of guys losing shots because they're too aggressive and because they short side themselves too often. And I've yet to find one guy who loses shots because he's too conservative. I mean, I haven't found one. And the thing is, when you think about it, like, so even apart from the cost of missing the green, if you miss the green short-sided, I mean, we look at this with Mark Brody, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. I said, Mark, you know, in ShotLink, every 20-yard bunker shot is the same. So if I've got a 20-yard bunker shot on a down slope with 3 yards of green to work with, that shot on ShotLink gives me the exact same difficulty of a 20-yard bunker shot with 15 yards of green to work with, a little bit downhill, that I just hit it out of the bunker and the ball is going to go stiff. And he said, oh, that's a good idea. Let me have a look. And then he comes back a week later and he says, I've actually noticed that anytime someone has less than 5 yards of green to work with, so basically short-sided, that shot is 0.3 shots more difficult than a similar shot from the other side of the green, which kind of makes sense because when you short-side yourself, it's way more difficult. So then, going back to your point, anytime a pin is in a corner, the biggest priority as a player should be not to short-side yourself. So just hit whatever shot that either hits the green, sometimes it gets close, and sometimes it misses on the far side of the green, but you shouldn't be short-siding yourself too much. And I mean, you know, I don't want to name anyone here, but there's a very famous player, probably just outside the top 10 in the world right now, who I think he should be winning 5-6 times a year. And he doesn't, because he just goes for every single pin on the golf course, hits driver on every hole, and just try to make 18 birdies. While, you know, Tiger would be the opposite. Tiger is like the typical player. Why was he so good when he had the lead? Because he would never make any mistakes. He was a great putter, great leg putter, and he would just, you know, bore you to death with like 3-wood on the fairway, stinger on the fairway, middle of the green, 2-putt. Eventually, he would make a birdie on a par 5. Eventually, he would make a putt from 20 feet. Eventually, he would hit one close, but then he would never, ever miss it on the short side. And, you know, based on you know, I've only been doing this for many players for like a year and a half now, but like everything I've seen is that everyone is or tends to be a little too aggressive, and also they don't usually, especially good players, we don't respect water hazards, OB enough. Like if there's a water hazard, I mean, the cost of going there, I mean, it might take you 6 great holes to get it back if you make a mistake. While, no one, you're not losing shots if you just play away from it, hit it to 30, 40 feet on the green, 2-putt, you're gaining on the field.
Yep.
I think that was one of the things that Tiger's always said, is that he was always very aggressive playing to his targets.
Yeah.
But only what he didn't say that his targets might have been 20, 25 feet away from the pin.
Oh yeah, at least. Like, I remember when he was playing 2 years ago now at the Masters when he won. He was in the final group with Francesco. And I mean, if you look at that Master, I think the last 3 groups on the 12th hole, I want to say out of 9 players, at least 6 went into the water. And I mean, the shot that Tiger hit on that hole, I mean, he could have hit a million shots and it's never going to hit in the water, because he hit like this big pool with a big divot with a 9-iron, just back left, somewhere on dry ground on the green, 2-putt from 50 feet, walk away. And that's where he won the Masters, I think. So he would never make a silly mistake, like, missing it in a bad spot when he's in the lead. Never.
So if I just kind of as a question, kind of where we are, or where I am right now with the other coaches here, and you're kind of talking to a group of kind of 15, 16, 17-year-old kids.
Yep.
Like, what would be your kind of starting point? Obviously, you've seen things right at the top end, the sharp end, kind of with the best in the world. So kind of if you trace that back and say, right, kind of where do you start this kind of conversation?
I would say, especially for kids. Like, I remember having a conversation with a good junior at my club, who's like in the Italian national team. He's like 15 years old, really good player, hits the ball a long way. And I remember we were discussing, I don't know whether it was Tiger, the Masters or something, and he said to me, well, I asked him, to be honest, I played 9 holes with him, and I could tell that he was going at every flag, everything was right at the flag. And I asked him, how many times do you go for a pin in 18 holes? And he looks at me and he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, how many times you try to hit your approach shot into the green stiff? And he goes, 18. And I'm like, what? I said to him, so every time you're trying to hit it stiff? And he said, oh yeah, 100%. I said, whether there's water, it's a 4-iron over water. He said, oh, if it's a 4-iron over water, I might go 2 or 3 meters away from the water. And it's like, as a junior, I mean, especially with juniors, I mean, in a way, it's how they're juniors, they're young and they think they're unbeatable. But like, it's making them understand that I think this game is very much about avoiding bogeys and avoiding especially big numbers rather than making birdies. I mean, making birdies, it's basically par 5s, and it's like making a good putt or just giving yourself enough chances to make birdies. But you don't make birdies you don't make good scores by shooting at every pin and then when you miss it, hope you get it up and down. So I think with, to go back to your question, with juniors, I would try and teach them as much as possible or explain to them that the way to shoot lower scores is to give yourself as many chances as you can, because from 15, 20 feet, even 10 feet, sometimes a great putt doesn't go in, and sometimes an average putt goes in. So it's just a law of averages. You just have to give yourself enough chances in 18 holes to make enough birdies, and just making sure that when you miss it, you still have some sort of a chance to make a putt. And I think that would be, that would save shots to anyone.
Brilliant. Just on that sort of as well, for the guys that are, obviously you've shown the app, say for the coaches or the players that are out there, how's the easiest way for them to be able to, if that's something that they want to do, how do they find it? How is it available? And
right now it is available on the App Store, and the name is Statistic Golf. It's very easy. I'll send also a link to Hank and Jussi. If Marty, you've got a link as well. If you guys wanna give it a go, you will have. I think it's right now it's a 3 days free trial, and then you have to buy a subscription. But then also what's coming in the, I want to say, next month or so, there will be like a coaching version. So right now each account is available for one player. You can use it with multiple players, but then when you go into the history, all the drills will be mixed across players. While we're now building together with Phil, we're building like a version of the app where a coach will be able to have multiple students accounts. So like you will log in, you will have your 10, 15, 20 students, whatever, and then they can do the drill when they're with you. And then if they have a subscription as well, then everything will be synchronized. So when they come to see you, you will be able to see what they have been doing. And then they can go away and you can tell them, right, do me, an inside 6-foot drill, putting drill once a week. And then as soon as they do it, you get like a notification and everything will be synchronized. So at the moment, simply because it started as an extra tool for the guys that I'm working for on the stats side of things. And then Phil, saw a lot of interest from his own, regular clients, and he said, "Oh, if I had a coaching version where I had the ability to swap between multiple students, it would help me better." So we only started building it in December, and it went on live on the App Store middle of February. So it's very, very new, and there will be more and more upgrades coming in the coming weeks and months. But it's like I think it's a small tool that, as I said, I saw it on myself. When anytime I'm on the putting green, I can just putt like this. But then as soon as I go into a drill and I record a drill, just the fact that I'm recording a drill, and then all it goes into my history, and then I will be able to review it. It just gives you that little bit of a different feeling when you're actually doing the drill.
Yeah, that's just, and the guys that have heard me so far up until now, that's literally, I'm not saying I don't do it any other way, but it's literally how I spend my days is measuring practice. So I think that's kind of a bit of a cliche, when you got a scorecard in your back pocket, everything changes, right? So knowing that there's, whatever you log on the putting green on a Tuesday at an event, or on a Monday at your home club, that's going to be recorded and your coach is able to see it. I think it's invaluable. And from a costing point of view, I think, if you think about the money that people spend, buying a dozen golf balls or whatever it may be, I think, that's, I'm big on this, that I think we all need to spend money on our own development. And I think it's for the price and what it is, and for what the players can get, and more importantly, what the coaches have then access to. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think you guys have done a great job. But I'm just mindful of time, and I know it's now 4:05 in the morning here, but that's all good. Just for the guys and girls that are listening, and for Hank, maybe if you want to jump in here and kind of help service this as well. I know we had a couple of questions that were asked. I need to find that here, leading into the presentation. But potentially, if you guys, and it's a one-off offer that you've got Edoardo sitting here live, you have an opportunity on the back of what he's kind of talked about this evening. Please ask as many questions as you can. And I said, I'm very mindful of your bubble time too, mate. You need to.
I'm good. I just need to go and get dinner at some point, but I've still got a few minutes.
Okay, fantastic. So Hank, maybe if you want to kind of maybe manage this a little bit as well from your end.
Yeah. We had actually, I sent it to Eduardo or Marty. You sent
Yeah.
it, but there's
Yeah.
also in the chat. There's one question that about the kind of the values when you're coaching or playing on tour. Do they differ or?
Yeah. I think, well, I thought about this question today on my flight, and I think as a player, I'll start from the player first. So as a player, I think there's two things that are very important. Is one is to respect whoever you're working with, because I've seen too many times that players are playing poorly and then they blame the swing coach, they blame their putting coach, they blame their caddy. But as Marty was saying in the beginning, we are accountable for our scores, for everything. I've never blamed one of my caddies or one of my coaches for me playing poorly or for a bad club, whatever. Because at the end of the day, it's my decision. Like if I go to see Marty and Marty says, you should have a very strong left-hand grip, it's my decision whether I want to do it or not. So he can say whatever he wants, but then at the end of the day, it's my business and I'm accountable for it. So if I don't like it, I might walk away and go find someone else. But it's always it's my decision, it's my career. So it's like, I want to be, and I am accountable for my own actions. And then the other thing as a player that I think is very important and it's very much overlooked sometimes is I notice like the good players when they're practicing, when they're doing their own thing, they just focus way more than everyone else. Like I would say half of the players on tour, you see them on the range, chatting to someone else, looking at their phone, listening to music while they're practicing. And it's like, I've never seen Tiger do that. I've never seen Westy do that. I mean, they might have a chat, but then when it's time to go to work, they just go to work. And it's like you find Tiger always in the most quiet corner of the range. I mean, West is similar. I mean, a lot of the top guys are like, they might spend 5 minutes chatting away with someone, but then when they decide I've got 40 minutes to work, it's like 40 minutes, heads down, and no one talks. It's like business. And I think as a player, you can tell from like 50 yards away who's really just spending time because they get bored if they go back to the room. And as a coach, I would say again, let me just as a coach, I think it's two things again. It's again, it's respect, because it's like we as a player respect, well, I as a player respect everyone that I'm working with, but like myself when I'm coaching someone, it's like I pretend respect from the other person and I respect you. So it's like it's the biggest thing in professional golf, and I think it's in most sports. It's like just to understand that everyone is doing their best, and if it's not good enough, then you can choose someone else. But it's like at least just acknowledge that I'm doing the best I can. Then if you don't like it, fine, we can be friends anyway. And then two, as a coach, I think is listen to the player, always listen to the player, because I think sometimes it's very easy for a coach to like look at a video, look at a pattern or something and say, oh, this is what you need to do. But then at the end of the day, we are the ones that are going out there to hit the shots. And again, if you tell me something that I'm not comfortable with, maybe I don't have the personality or the charisma to tell you, oh, I'm never going to do this. And I tell you, oh, yeah, it feels good on the range. And then I don't do any performance drills on the range. It feels fantastic. I get into a rhythm. And then I get on the first tee and I hit a snap hook into the bushes. And it's like, this left-hand grip is, it doesn't work for me. But it's like, I think as a coach, you have to be open to listen to players saying whatever. Even if my left hand is very weak, I'm just not going to change it because that's the way how I feel comfortable, and you have to be able to find alternative solutions because it's like, it would be too easy, I think, if you have, and it would be quite boring. I mean, if you have a perfect solution for everyone, and you say something, it works, the player goes on the course, fantastic. But it's like it's much more, as you know, it's much more complex than that. And I think from both sides, I think it's like, sometimes I've got, even with this stats thing that I'm doing, I've got some players, they want to know everything, and some other players, they want to know nothing. So the players, they want to know nothing, then I just go to the caddy and says, right, if there's wind of the right, just give him a target which is a bit more to the right, or whatever you want to say to him, just make sure he's playing more conservative. And then if there's wind of the left, just make him play more aggressive, because he's fantastic with wind of the left. But then the player, some players, they're like, oh, I'm not bothered, I'm paying you, but then you tell these things to my team, and then I will get the information in some sort of way. So everyone's different, and I think you have to be able to just work differently and work with different personalities and different style of players.
That's great.
Yeah. Then there's one question: how did you choose your current caddy?
My current caddy is well, my real caddy had a back surgery about a month ago, so I've now got a replacement. And so the caddy so he's been my longtime caddy, Andy. He's about 57 years old, and I chose him. I mean, I changed quite a few caddies in my career. I don't like to change too often, but I changed, I would say, 5 caddies. And again, with experience, with time, I managed to understand that I think the most important thing in a caddy is just getting along well with him, having something to talk about, because at the end of the day, we spend 8 hours a day, at least 6 days a week. So you have to really like the guy and have something to talk about, because I had some very good caddies that they only lasted a few months, simply because it got very boring on the golf course when you're waiting in practice rounds, in pro-ams. It's like, if it's just business, then it becomes very boring. And then I had some worse caddies from the actual, getting the club right and getting the wind right, but they work better in the end for me, because there was more on the golf course. They could take my mind off golf between shots. It just depends what you want. But I noticed that the most successful relationship players and caddies are those where they get along well. Sometimes you even see them having dinner together or having lunch together. Sometimes some of the players go to the caddy lounge just for a chat with the caddy after the round, and usually those relationships are those that last longer.
Great. Any more questions from the crowd? This is your last chance.
Edoardo, can I ask you just kind of one or two kind of, I guess, from a personal perspective, just, you brought up your putting earlier on. Do you think it was a good idea to kind of, again, this subjective yes or no, but kind of expand on a little bit, like to become more consistent in your putting? Or was it more of a case that in hindsight, maybe, to accept that kind of it's, putting can, it can be streaky, that when you're hot, and just accept that? Or was it, how do you feel about that now in kind of hindsight?
No, I think, obviously putting is the part of the game that has the biggest volatility, the biggest up and downs. To be honest, my putting, even when I was playing well, was never good enough. Like, probably if, the way I was playing golf 10 years ago, if I was putting like I was putting in 2015, 2016, where I couldn't hit a golf ball on the planet, then I probably had a chance to win a major. But then at the time, my putting was nowhere near good enough. And again, because I was just counting, putts per green, number of putts, it was to realize whether it was good, bad, whatever it was. But then I think overall I had to do something to get it better. And again, with the Arnold for a couple of years, I putted fantastic. And then I started to putt poorly with the Arnold. So now I'm back with a short one. And it took quite some time to get used to it. Sorry. It took quite some time to get used to it, but so just give me 1 second because sorry. Can I just make a...
Do whatever you like. You're in the bubble.
Oh, way. Apparently dinner is shocking. So I'm just saying something. Oh, I mean, can you guys see this? This is dinner in the bubble, a soup. So anyway, let me connect the computer so no dinner tonight. You said prison. I think in prison sometimes you get better food, Marty. So going back to my putting, I think my putting needed to get better, and with the Arnold it got much better. And then at some point it started to get worse again with the Arnold, so I just went back to the short one. And again, with putting, I think it's the most difficult thing to do, but you have to just keep working on a certain thing. I mean, I was watching the Masters this weekend on TV, and there's like, I think the top 20 players, they got 20 different grips, 20 different putters. Like, one has got the Arnold, one has got like this, like the hands, and I mean, you name it, you see it on TV. But it's like the most consistent guys are those that just find a system and they just keep working on it each and every day. I mean, it's like, again, I like always to go back to Tiger because I think he's the best that ever played the game. And anytime I saw Tiger at an event, whether it was 20 years ago or 2 years ago, he's doing the exact same drill. So he puts 2 tee pegs on the ground, one hand, and he just rolls 4 putts with one hand, 1 putt two-handed. And he does it 100 times in a row. And it's like, I mean, it might work for him and it might not work for other guys, but it's almost like he found a system where he knows it works for him. And it just keeps going back to my initial thing. It just keeps getting better and better each day at what he does. He doesn't try different style. He just sticks with one and just tries to make it 1.1% better each and every day. And it's similar with all the great putters. They never change putter, they never change putting style, but they just keep getting better and better and better.
There's one question about the application. So
yeah,
so soon the player can enter shots to the app after round and send it to the coach, or?
Yeah, well, the app is only to do practice. You don't record stats.
Yeah.
But you do drills on the range. So right now, what you can do is, for example, if I'm here and I want my coach at home to see my practice sessions, then I can give him my login details and he logs in and he's got access to everything. And then, as I said, in a few weeks, hopefully just a few weeks maybe, when there will be a coaching version of the app, the coach will have direct access without asking me the login details directly to my account, if that's an answer to the question.
I think that's all from these questions. Any more? Just there's speed and shape of greens at Masters and overall about green reading there.
Yeah. Well, it's I think I played the Masters 4 times, and I think every time what was very difficult to adjust to was not so much the speed of the greens, but it was the amount of break that there is on those greens, the amount of slopes. I mean, the speed of the greens is not stupid. It becomes stupid because of the slopes. So sometimes you have a 10-foot putt on a 4% slope, and all of a sudden you have to aim 5 foot right, which you never do. But it's like what you don't realize on TV is how undulated those greens are. Like I remember the first time I played 16, I was expecting to see a massive slope on the green, you know, that back left pin where everything goes down to. But actually, that slope on the green is just it's a pretty basic slope. I mean, it's not very tilted, but then because of the speed and the firmness of the greens, the ball will never stop there. But like I've got a lot of slopes like that on my golf course where the ball just stands, you know, sits still there and doesn't move. But because of the speed, then as soon as the ball gets there, it just goes down 20, 30 feet. So I think what's very difficult is not so much the speed, as I said, but more like the green reading. And it's very difficult to practice for it, unfortunately, because it's like some of the putts you have there, I mean, you never have them anywhere else. I mean, I think every time I played the Masters, I had at least 2 or 3 putts in the week where I was putting this way and the hole was behind me. And I mean, where can I practice that? And then, I mean, nowhere. And even like a 6-foot putt where I have to hit it 3 foot to the right and hit it half an inch. I mean, you never have those putts. So it's something that is very difficult. And I think it's something that you either have it or you don't have it. And I think that's part of the reason that the same guys keep playing well. That's part of the reason why Bryson cannot putt on those greens. Because Bryson is all about the angle, the slope percentage, the stimp. But it's like you have to go a little bit more by feel there. And there's no green. So it's like you got this part, you have to somehow read it yourself. And he's used to having 2% on a 25 degrees and just does a few calculations. It says 3.5 inches to the right. And he can't do it there. And I think that's going to be tricky for him.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's all question. Marty, Jussi, do you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I
just kind of at the just kind of at the finishing note. I mean, just really appreciate Edoardo taking your time, taking the time to kind of share the insight. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say. So really, really, really appreciate it kind of from a coaching perspective and something that we can certainly kind of first thing in the morning just share with our players as well, if that's okay. And
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Here's the insight from somebody who's been at the coalface as a player and somebody who's kind of now doing it to help other players develop their careers. So, terrific. Really appreciate it. And
thank you very much
for kind of helping to make it happen. So eternally thankful.
Thank
well,
you.
From my end, guys, Edoardo, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
I still love watching you, and your journey hasn't stopped yet. I'm trying to work out how you're going to juggle you teeing up on a Thursday with one of your people that you're working with coming over to the range.
The problem will be on Sunday.
Maybe you need to put headphones on.
No, I have to say they've been very good. During the week they might ask a few questions early on, but then Thursday to Sunday it's all business. I think. I think the first time I played with one of them on a Sunday, and he'll ask me on the Saturday night, should I go for that thing tomorrow or?
I'd love you to be in the same group on the back nine on Sunday with someone that you're working with trying to beat.
Yeah.
That would just be the best.
Have the advantage going. Okay, you should go to that.
I know what he's about to do. It'd be very funny if he's got that back left pin and he's looking at you going, because of you, I'm not going at that.
Don't draw this one.
It will happen.
Go for it.
That's right. No, pleasure, guys. And I can't thank everyone enough. And I hope, more importantly, for the coaches and the players that are listening, I hope you got a lot out of it. And Eduardo, giving up your time is just the best. So
Thank
all
you
the
very
best this
much.
week, and mate, I will be definitely coming over at some point, so we can maybe share some time in the bubble and have some of that crappy soup somewhere along the line.
Yeah, thank you once again, Eduardo. Like you
Thank you very much, guys.
Wonderful to hear the insights from there and see kind of the things are
Thank
simple
you.
and we're making it many times too complicated. So just kind of keep doing the good stuff, but getting better every day, and don't change the good
Absolutely.
things that we're doing. So good to hear.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you, Jussi, for inviting me to do this. It's been a great pleasure. It was a great hour and a half. Thank you, Marty, for making the connection as well.
And good luck in the next tournament.
Thank you.
Go beat all the young kids.
Thank you, Marty, for waking up so early. So really appreciate it and getting this.
I'm going to get another coffee right now.
Well, you have a great coffee machine, so enjoy it. Now you have a reason to use it. So
that's right. All right, guys. Have a good evening.
Have a great
Cheers.
day.
Thanks for everything, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Eduardo.
You
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.